So how can I get my first job in digital marketing? Daniel?
First of all, I don't think you need to get your first job in digital marketing. You've got some expertise in the area already. I mean, if someone is trying to get their first job, the challenge you've got is three things. It's what qualifications have you got to show what you know? What experience do you have? And that's normally where the problem is. And then what examples can you demonstrate of things that you've done?
So why don't we start with experience then?
This is the chicken egg situation. Okay, you've come out from school, you've come out from university, you've come from a different career in a completely different industry, or maybe you've been in marketing but not in digital marketing, and you decide you want to move into this area, and then people go, well, how much experience have you got? And the answer is none. Okay, so we have to get past that kind of friction, and I would always look at it as three scales. One is qualifications, one is experience, one is the examples. And if one's on zero, the others have kind of got to be higher up from that point of view as well. So no experience, it's not the end of the world. There's other things you can do.
So what about qualifications then?
So that's one thing you could do. You could say, right, I have got a great qualification that maybe is a degree or a master's degree or a CIM level 4, 5 or 6 qualification to say, I know what I'm doing, and this demonstrates that. My issue as an employer is that a qualification is great and it shows your dedication to studying and that you can go through a series of kind of hoops to jump through. I would argue it doesn't really mean you know what you're doing. You may do, you may be brilliant, but you may not do, because you can tick the boxes but not be practical. So you've got to then combine that with kind of something else at that stage as well. And
then what about examples?
Yeah, and that's where this comes in. So no experience, great, hopefully have some qualification of some description, whether that could be an online certificate or something like that. But I want to see examples then of what you've done. It doesn't need to be in a job, but it could be, I built my own website, I set up a blog, I set up a podcast, I've created a social media account, a YouTube account, I've grown its following, I've iterated the content, I've looked at the analytics, I've done some sort of project, doesn't need to make money, that demonstrates I've applied this stuff in practice. And I think the reality is you've got to try and combine those things. Experience on its own, we've got tons of examples naturally because you've done something. Qualifications on their own, probably not going to be trusted. If you've got huge amounts of examples without qualification, that could also work as well, because they will, you aren't qualified, but I don't really care because I can demonstrate you know what you're doing. Let's try and do this in the real world in a commercial way as well.
You can go to the nth degree. I mean, I got one of my big breaks in my career in skincare, and I created a skincare blog for men. And
to try and
yeah, it's literally, and it was a sideline project at the time. I was working for a sailing academy, but I really wanted this job. Now that's something I'd done. I was able to talk about at the interview that none of the other candidates had. So very often when you're going for a particular role, everyone else is in the same boat and they're all lacking the experience. It's all about showing to the employer, actually, I'm really hungry for this, I'm really passionate about this, and I do this. I mean, I had some other things up my sleeve, like Daniel and I were already doing the podcast.
Right.
None of the other candidates were doing a podcast on digital marketing. So just through benefit of doing that, I had lots that I could talk about and share and talk about experts like that. Doing a podcast every month, as we were back then, hugely useful, because actually it forced me to learn. It forced me to carry on like having conversations with people and finding out about new things, because there's always that pressure. So sometimes you do have to. I didn't back then have a ton of experience necessarily. Like I'd work for one organisation, but all these little extra things built up a picture of here's somebody that's enthusiastic, applies themselves with enthusiasm to this, and that's exactly what most employers are after.
So do you have any other tips for securing your first job?
I think really, to what Kieran said, is differentiate yourself in some way, right? Because if everyone's come out and got a degree, all you're on is an even playing field now. It's just that everyone's got a degree, or if everyone's done the level 6 qualification, or if everyone's done something else. So you want to try and show, I have done something different by applying this. And the nice thing about this industry is there's so many opportunities for doing that. Podcasts, YouTube channels, all those kind of things. You can create something and you can say, this is the thing I did, this is what I learned from it. Does it get many listeners? No, it doesn't, but that's okay because I've learned X, Y, and Z from doing it, and I would do this differently going forward. So don't think you've got to build like a YouTube channel of 10 million followers. Not at all. If you've got a handful of followers, it's fine, just to show I've applied it, I've built it, this is what I learned, this is what I'm going to do differently.
My degree is in English and drama. I mean, you know, and I suppose part of me, that's what pushed me hard to try and come up with other things, because I didn't have that kind of degree level background, but I was able to present a good enough picture to get hired, not just once, but multiple times with lots of different companies.
And I think being a problem solver, that's exactly what you were doing. You were kind of seeing, okay, what my problem is that, you know, my degree doesn't necessarily prove that I can do this. What can I do to demonstrate that as well? What problem can I solve by going through and applying some of these technologies?
Having said that, the one thing that actually I think got me the job at the skincare company was the fact that I was an award-winning pantomime dame, because the CEO found that hilarious. Right, so if you don't know what pantomime dame is, it's like men dressing up as women and going on stage in drag, and it's kind of in a comedy play. For anyone watching in the US, wouldn't necessarily know what it is, but yeah. So I do think, like, don't forget, it's not just about being a robot and doing all this stuff.
Right.
You want to know the human side as well. You know, don't neglect things like sports that you play, because that shows you're a team player. You know, little things like that, like bringing in others that makes you present an all-rounded person. Don't just go career, because that can get a bit boring, a little bit scary actually. It's like, whoa, it's a bit too intense. You know, I've interviewed people like that. It's like, oh, yeah, be human.
And, yeah, and it depends on the team fit, right? And I think that's it. And it's kind of understand what that organisation, that team needs, and then see how you can demonstrate that from being a team player, from having an interest in the environment, whatever it might be. That stuff is all stuff that's going to come through and help you get that first job.